Hi, Phil here, and I did see the movie Del Toro's Frankenstein, and that was pretty good. I think my mother kind of chickened out a bit at sometimes. This was her idea. I mean, she told me about it. But anyway, yeah, it was a cool movie. Yet another adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Very nice, very good. And you know, all the good movies, the good ones, the good adaptations of this particular story do have the Arctic sailing ship as a bookend of sorts to the story, because the captain's plight does parallel that of Victor Frankenstein's. Like, are you consumed by the same madness as me? And by the way, there are going to be spoilers, for that particular movie. Evidently, it's a Netflix production, as I've observed from the trailers and such. But okay, but I saw it in theaters, and according to the information, it's only going to be released on Netflix November 7th. So, after Halloween, significantly. Okay, sure. Netflix does all sorts of great stuff. I should watch more of their movies. But yeah. Ones that are films that are a faithful adaptation to the source material really do include the bookend of sorts. The voyage, exploration of the Arctic Circle by an ambitious captain who wants to, sail up there and navigate to the North Pole. And this does parallel with Victor Frankenstein's ambition to, create a scientific discovery and take the fame and glory for, changing the world and, great innovation and discovery for science. And of course, this whole thing is a bookend of sorts to the story, both beginning and end. And I gotta say, in this particular version of the movie, the story, I think they kind of exaggerate Frankenstein's strength, because he can push all kinds of things, like a whole boat out of the ice and such, and he can just push at the boat that's stuck in the ice and shift it around and such. And it seems like an exaggeration even for him. He's a Frankenstein's monster. He's super strong, superhuman. Like, all the other stuff he does, like surviving gunfire and stabbings and all sorts of violence, that's understandable. Super healing factors, enduring the cold, that's all normal, for a superhuman monster. But I don't know. This isn't exactly Superman or something, Though I guess they both end up in the North Pole at some point, trying to make their domain, their fortress of solitude, in both cases. Yeah, and as for the creature design, it changes over the course of the film, but there are times when he just sort of looks like a sort of he looks a lot like those pale engineers from Prometheus, those sort of humanoid aliens where they're all long and ultra pale and such, and they're super tall. But this one, he's all marked up, and he's got all these stitches and scars on his body because he's put together from corpses, a composite. You know, the grotesque imagery like that. Actually, I think, as I recall, there's this particular race in Dungeons and Dragons called the Goliaths. They're at least aesthetically similar, but it's more like they're also tall, gray-skinned humanoids who are big and strong and such, but they also have a naturally occurring tattoos in their body, like all these lines covering themselves, because it's a sort of a magic, naturally occurring thing. But here I am getting detracted by Dungeons and Dragons yet again. I always seem to bring it up, but why do I obsess over that? The company that owns that franchise isn't even very good, in my opinion. They're always up to something. But anyway, yeah. Frankenstein's monster. And in this version of the story, Elizabeth isn't exactly a love interest for Victor. Not exactly. In the source material and in the 1990s film adaptation, they made it clear that they have this really odd relationship where she is technically an adopted child into Victor Frankenstein's family. So they're like step siblings or something, but they're not really related by blood. And apparently that's the only thing that matters, not the way their family tree is set up, because they've gone with that whole incest but not really incest, because the two of them, despite being raised as siblings, they have a romantic involvement, which is true of the source material. But I don't know, that always did sit wrong. It's that same thing you hear with like raunchy anime and such, where they keep making this excuse. Well, they're only step siblings, they're not really related by blood, so that makes it okay. And like, I don't know, guys. On an emotional level, on being raised as siblings, even though you're not related by blood, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me. This version is quite different, as Elizabeth isn't even in a relationship with Victor. And it seems like in every version of that story, Elizabeth really is too good for Victor. She really is. Like, she puts up with so much. She has moral convictions. She doesn't approve of this and doesn't approve of that. And she has serious issues with the things Victor does. Understandable. And rather, William, Victor's younger brother, is the guy who's going to marry Elizabeth. So that works out, I guess, maybe, kind of. Look, Victor's got other things on his mind, like innovating science and such, because apparently there's this whole drama with his family where he's the son of a baron who is a renowned surgeon and the best in his field. Yet that wasn't good enough to save Victor's mother, who, died in childbirth, because that's that grim situation where he's motivated to like cure death itself. And that happens often in the stories. Apparently his father was a bit harsh and abusive, and he's like, I'm not going to whip you on your hands anymore. You need those for working and being a surgeon. You're going to be whipped in the face when you misbehave. And he's like, oh no, Dad, no. Whack. Your face is nothing but vanity. It's okay if you lose it. Whack, whack. And then he hits him with a stick. And he's like, all I did was get the wrong answer on a medical exam. Like, I'm not even 15 yet. Why am I being treated so harshly? He's like, well, then you better become the best doctor in the whole world, because you've got high expectations. And he kind of does, because he just straight up invents the cure for death. And he just keeps these corpses on display that he can just flip on and off, because he's got the off button to the corpse. And he builds these weird sort of like green glowing tube sort of light bulbs if you stick enough into the machine, and it just sort of reanimates the corpse. But he's got to make the whole thing last longer, because you can't just have a person with an off button who's just like in a vegetative state or anything. That's not good enough. As usual, other academics at the university in medical science, they're like, this is gross, this is disgusting, this is unnatural. Like, Victor, you're going too far. But the other guy, the uncle of Elizabeth, he's some sort of munitions engineer, some sort of industrialist, is a musician. Musician? No, munitions, guns, bombs and weapons and such. What's wrong with me? And he's like, I believe in your work. I'm going to fund it. I just want to be able to take pictures of it and such, for posterity. He's like, oh, okay. Also, could you please flush my piss I made over there? Like, what? Like, yes, do it, Baron. I don't care if you're the Baron. I'm the one with the money, and that makes me the real boss around here. I just love the sound my piss makes when it hits the toilet. This is an actual scene in the movie. It's like, Could you please flush it for me? He's like, I'm not gonna do it. He just leaves it there. Fancy industrialist, he's like, this old-timey building is in complete disrepair, but I think it would make a good laboratory for your experiments, and I want to see some results. Okay, I need metal things here, and wires here, and big electric generators, and loads of flammable gas, because that's actually going to be really important later on in the plot. And there's this tube that you could just flush all your garbage down, and there's a dungeon in the basement with chains. Don't ask about it. Don't ask too many questions. And of course, corpses. We're going to need lots and lots of corpses in order to make this work. Like, corpses? Well, I am a war profiteer of sorts. I can get to the battlefield and find all the corpses, but you must understand, if the war ends, that's my funding being negatively impacted. So I really want you to hurry up with the schedule. He's like, okay. And so he's like, let's go to this battlefield and find all these dead people and lift them up and see which ones are good and which ones are bad. Let me go to this public hanging where people are being executed. And the doctor looks over there. You're lucky you're being executed today. You wouldn't have survived until the next year. You've got this disease in you. And the old man's like, and it's grim. People are, hanged from the gallows and such. And then the doctor, he's like, okay, I've finished up the body. I've stitched all the pieces together. This is going to be the Frankenstein monster. Because everyone gets the name wrong. But all right. And he's like, oh, look at that. There's a storm brewing just in time. I better get everything done today, this second. And he wakes up the industrialist guy. He's like, oh, Victor, before you finish, there's something I need you to do. Like, could you hand me that cane? He's like, what's in it? A compartment. Mercury? Gotta say, as far as using mercury as a medicine, that sounds like a terrible idea, isn't it? Like poisonous? I'm not a doctor, but whatever. He's like, well, you see, I use this medicine to treat my syphilis. You know the saying, one night with Venus and a lifetime with Mercury. It's like, and that's what I was here to talk to you about. I need you to cut my brain out of my body and put it in that monster you're making. Like, what? Well, you see, this is my plan. You see, my attempt at living again. I won't be burdened with this disease in my body. I'll have a new body, and I can be healthy and strong and such. Like, that's not going to work, says the doctor. Like, syphilis goes to the brain. It's already contaminated every system in your body. There's no point. He's like, oh, but I need it. Oh, come on, man. I funded everything. Like, well, if you won't do it, I'm going to wreck your machine. He's like, no, just stop it. He breaks the wire thingy, this silver antenna thingy he needs. And he's like, stop that. And he falls down the tube, which, no hand railings or anything. That's the old-timey way about these things. He falls down the shaft and goes splat because he falls dead. Victor takes a look at his body. Even the brain is smushed. He's like, ugh, there's no saving you. Like, and he's like, oh, and he bent my antenna. Oh, no, I need that. Oh, I'll just have to make do with this. He gets his machine going during the lightning storm. And he reanimates the monster, and it's just as creepy as you'd expect. But he's at least able to tame the monster a little bit, because it's got, like, the brain of a child or something. Because it's essentially a whole new human being and not a reanimated corpse, per se, like another person living again. And he's like, okay, just chain this guy up in the basement, and I'll tell my friends all about this. Elizabeth and William come to visit, and Elizabeth has not quite the reaction I would expect if she finds a weird guy chained up in the basement, like a sort of dungeon-like place, and like, okay. All right. And she's all compassionate. He's like, how do you do this to this person? Who? What the hell? And he's like, well, let me explain what I did medically and such. And they're like, this is abhorrent. This is disgusting. And then people are like, I don't get it. Why is this monster dumb? I mean, he was born yesterday, but I think he's still too dumb. This monster's like, oh. Like, but he's super strong, and he has this healing regeneration factor. It's like Wolverine's healing ability. You cut him up and he just heals back. He's superhuman in every other regard. Victor's like, all right, that does it. I can't stand this. Especially if Elizabeth has more compassion for that monster than she does me. I can't stand it. I'm burning down this whole building. He puts all the gas or fluid or whatever. My mom debated about this issue, saying there's no gasoline back then. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a different fluid. I'm just thinking. And he does it. He burns down his laboratory. He's like, I'm done with this. This is terrible. And he's like, oh, but then again, maybe it is inhumane to just leave a guy trapped up in a burning building. Maybe I should do that too. Like, kaboom! He loses a leg in the explosion. Victor's not a happy guy after that, no. And the monster, who, escapes the burning building and falls down the trash tube with all the other corpses and such. And he's like, oh, this is terrible. He's just barely understanding the world, and he's wandering around. And every time he meets people, they want to kill him and they want to run away from him in fear, and, the usual routine. Angry mob of villagers wanting to get Frankenstein's monster and such, the usual routine. And it's this movie's so cool. I kept making references to BioShock in my previous assessment of the video, and that is kind of at least a bit aesthetically similar. But yeah, that is so cool, this movie. There's all the other cliches. The blind old man who doesn't immediately realize he's holding a conversation with a monster. I think that's where that old cliche came from in the first place. And, he learns how to read and talk and such. And monster is like, oh, my friend, you're my only friend. I have to protect you, but I have to find out about myself, who I am. And the old man is misinterpreting all this as a man with amnesia and not some sort of reanimated monster. Understandable. It's like, well, go there and understand yourself, he says, the old man. And when monster Frankenstein creature, when he returns, he finds wolves have attacked the old man. He's like, oh no, my only friend in the world is dead. And everyone hates me. That does it. I'm going to go find my creator and have a firm talk with him. And then they do the old routine where the monster confronts Victor and he's like, I want you to build a companion for me. Like, build a female version of my own self, like, so I could have a companion, And he's like, I'm not going to build you some waifu or whatever thing you're talking about. But I'm lonely. I'm the only of my kind. I have such tremendous love in me, and such tremendous anger and rage like you wouldn't believe. If I can't have one, I'll indulge the other. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it for you. You're probably going to breed up some race of super indestructible superhumans that'll take over the world. I'm not doing that. Like, oh, Elizabeth is the only one who ever cared about me. And like, no, there she is. Aren't they happy? And I'm like, no. She dies during gunfire in this fight that Victor has. And he's like, Victor, this is kind of your fault. You were the one with the gun. Oh no. Monster's sad because yet again the only person who was kind to him is dead. William dies in the crossfire in the ensuing fight in the building. And Victor, in spite of it all, he has no family left. And he's like, I'm going to devote my life to killing that monster. And he hunts him down. He's like, I need dynamite. I need guns. Or everything that could destroy him. And he's like, no. As we find out later in the movie, dynamite itself doesn't even work. He really is that indestructible. He's like practically immortal. Which makes me think this is going to be like a superhero origin more than a monster origin. Because in spite of all his hostility towards the sailors, he does eventually forgive Victor for creating him and all this trouble he's gone through. And he's like, that. The final advice he gives to the monster: if I've denied you death, then I suggest you live. It's like, live for myself. Like, stop being hateful and stop being killing. Just live. Interesting suggestion. And so he does. He just sort of walks off into the cold north wasteland, the North Pole, after he pushes the boat out into sea. I did mention there were spoilers in this review. I mean, that's basically the whole movie right there. And he pushes the boat out into sea, and the sailors are like, okay, I'm convinced. Let's go home. And they're like, okay, this isn't worth dying for, this cause. And Monster is just walking around in the Arctic tundra, seeing the sunset, and he's like, okay, I'm at peace with the world, finally. And yet, plenty of room for a sequel. It was good. But the thing is, the trouble when you make these movies so accurate to the source material, you realize the trouble, they can't really cross over and have, sequels and expanded universe as Universal Horror used to do. Universal Horror was at this game decades before Marvel and DC were making their own expanded universe, which, I like it for what it is, all these things. And they tried again with the whole dark universe thing, but that didn't get off the ground. Now, the trouble is, the source material was never intended to be a combined universe. Dracula and Frankenstein are separate stories with separate characters, and canonically, both characters die in their own respective stories, so there's not too much room for a crossover and such. Yet Universal Studios, they made their own, expanded universe. That's why they're called the Universal Monsters. They're the first of a combined group, and they're the faces of Halloween, pretty much. Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Phantom of the Opera, Hunchbacks, all sorts of stuff like that. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, if only there was some way for the monsters to all get together and have a big old monster mash, or fight to the death, or whatever. If it were trying to be accurate to the source material, I guess it depends on the version, but the more accurate you go to the source material, the less likely there is for the crossover. And previously, I did see reviews. Well, I made reviews of films that I saw in theaters. Another remake of The Wolfman, and a remake of Nosferatu. Those were pretty cool. And, Halloween this year has been pretty cool, I feel. But there's the trouble. Not every version of the story ends with much wiggle room for sequels, and not much opportunity for crossovers with later on stuff. Van Helsing basically got the crossover going from the start, He hunts the vampires and such. Well, this one, I guess, technically, the creature is still alive and kind of immortal in his own way. So he just sort of accepts life as it is, or makes something of himself. I don't know, maybe he just comes to peace with the world, makes peace with God, makes peace with humanity, something like that. But, could be a sequel to this film, I hope, maybe. I don't know. It'd be nice if we had nice things, like a modernization of the Universal horror movies and such that crossed over and just sometimes did their own thing, made something new out of it. The Invisible Man also got a remake, and that one was pretty cool, even though it seemed completely separate from anything Universal Horror was doing. Well, yeah, the movie Invisible Man, that wasn't even really like magic or supernatural stuff. I mean, it was all treated as plausible scientific and innovation, like a suit that just straight up turns you invisible and gives you some sort of partial super strength. Like, theoretically could be made. It all feels more like sci-fi tech than like the usual thing about vampires and zombies rising from the grave and that sort of thing. If you didn't see the movie, why on earth are you looking at my review? Like, really now? Well, you can look forward to seeing it on Netflix. It'll be there November 7th, from what I've been told. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. Have a good night, everyone, and a good Halloween.